What makes a job good?
They think the most important thing is the KPIs. People are getting in that role and they're like, now that I'm trying to lead, I have to figure out how to motivate, engage, and keep people happy. And they're not a t-shirt, so I don't know how to do that. And what that pressure does is it sends people into survival mode.
What makes a job engaging? What gets overlooked? And what do store managers need VPs to fix that they cannot? So, keen ears may have noticed that we've been moving through what's commonly known as the 7 critical stages of the employee lifecycle: attract, hire, onboard, engage, perform, develop, depart. I do think it's a helpful model to approach assessing and improving employee experience and thus organizational performance. But the one very big issue I have with it is that when these stages are diagrammed or written about, they're usually given the same weight. When I would argue that the engage stage, accounts for a much larger part of the experience. I'm not saying they're not all critical. They certainly are, and they're interdependent. But when you're a large established organization and you're experiencing employee retention challenges, I see so many companies amp up attraction and recruitment efforts when I think it makes sense to, with the same urgency, focus on why you're experiencing that challenge in the first place. So today we're talking about the engage stage, and not in the engagement survey sense, but the real lived everyday experience that makes someone stay or leave. Unlike attracting, hiring, onboarding, it doesn't have a moment. It doesn't have a start and a stop or a timeline or a module. It's just every day I go to work.
Mhm.
And I think it gets overlooked because it doesn't look like a nice, contained, approachable, defined project. It just looks like Tuesday. And it's really hard to own because it's constant and it's messy and undefined and it's very localized. So I'm sure it differs from region to district to store to department, maybe. But when it goes wrong, you get all the symptoms like apathy or fully disgruntled employees and eventually turnover that hurts the business. And when it goes right, you, of course, get the opposite: engaged, high performing, tenured teams. So, a simple question to start off with: what makes a job good?
What a lie that was. When I figure it out, I'll let you know. No, as
Yeah.
someone who's sort of traversed many jobs, some would argue too many, this is obviously a question that I've like personally pondered a lot. Like, is
Mhm.
it, is it pay? Is it like why I come to work? Is it what I'm doing every day? And, as I sort of like move through my career, I'm at a point now where like, I think the best way to define it would be what makes a job good would be that most of the days are good. And it's kind of that simple, but also that complicated. And the thing that I've learned about that for myself anyway is that like pay is nice, but it's not going to make every day good. And meaning or purpose is nice, but it's not going to make every day good. Really, what's going to make most days good is just the day to day goes well. And I leave and I go, wow, I had fun today. That was a great day. There wasn't, any major stresses or 911s or things like pulling focus from what I actually need to do. That was a good day. And the more of those I have, the more I can define a job as that's a good job.
Yeah. Months ago, I shared with you this hyper simplified framework that I was playing with to describe exactly what you just did. What makes a job good? What makes it feel worth staying in long term? And in this hyper simplified framework, I landed in essentially 3 buckets. And I think you just touched on all of them. I think most people need at least one.
Hmm.
Ideally, you're experiencing 2 or more. And of course, the lower one gets, the higher the one that you are getting has to be. So they're all on a sliding scale. It's not, on or off with them. Again, wildly simplified, but good pay, whatever that means, competitive, sufficient for you, is one. The next would be some kind of purpose, some kind of meaning, some sort of feeling like I'm contributing to something, I'm a part of something. My work is bigger than the day to day task that I'm doing. But then the enjoyable day to day, I think, is one that, and I said it before, gets overlooked, but it's undervalued.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because different people will value more of one than the other, right? Like
Mhm.
some
For
people
sure.
will for sure value pay, some people purpose, and that can fluctuate with the same person throughout seasons of their life.
Mm.
We need to think of them all on a sliding scale, but everyone will have a minimum threshold for one of those things. Overall, you need to achieve, I mean, anecdotally, let's say like 80%, right? If like you have three bar graphs or whatever, the lower one gets the higher the other two have to compensate, and vice versa. So just like to explain what we're talking about, going through the three, if you have really great pay, but your day to day is crap, you kind of dread going to work and you don't really feel connected to a purpose. A lot of people call that something like golden handcuffs.
Hmm. And I think something like that, like to your point, is
Yeah.
really works for someone specific. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're, especially if the golden handcuffs are really quite golden with some platinum accoutrements attached, and you have some kids and an ailing parent at home, but
Mhm.
it's able to afford you a nice house, you might be able to say that your purpose in work is that you're getting to provide for the people that you love. And I think then you can sort of, but to your point, that means that money bar has to be really, really high so
Right.
that the other things can be sacrificed.
Yeah. Because there can be personal purposes like that. It's serving my personal purpose, my role in my family context, but then it could also be like a company purpose for sure.
Mhm.
Work feels like play, for example, might be pay is not good. I don't really feel like a purpose, but man, I have a fun day. Those still tend to be short tenured roles
Mhm.
because most people are either, not most, I mean, hey, work is what it is to you, and that's great. But eventually, some people either get tired of doing the same thing or they want to achieve, they have higher ambitions in terms of growth or money or something like that. Then you can have a really compelling purpose, but no pay and a kind of crappy day to day. That's kind of like martyrdom. Like that's just,
That and you just described my resume. I would say that most jobs I've had, like reflecting back,
mhm,
I have felt a purpose. That's like why I started at an organization because I
mhm,
liked the values or what they do or the sort of meaning behind something. And then
mhm.
I felt compensated because that's important to me to feel well compensated.
Right.
And then my day to day was just a slog most times.
Yeah, I would call that one. So if you have high pay and a compelling purpose, but a crappy day to day, I call that the noble grind.
Hmm.
It's like I believe in this, and like man, I'm white knuckling through it, but not probably not sustainable, and certainly not highest performance promoting.
Hmm.
And then you can have a great day to day and a compelling purpose, but crappy pay, and that's kind of that labor of love. Eventually, money stress might take its toll, and turnover still gets high. If you can have all three, that's like the dream job in whatever ratio makes sense to you.
Hmm.
I guess I should ask, where do you think you are right now in terms of those three things? You don't have to give a number score, but do you have a ranking?
Like for each pillar,
Yeah.
I would say that right now, where I am in my career, is I'm content with my pay. It's neither too low nor do I feel like, oh my God, this is the best I've ever made.
Hmm.
But my day to day is the highest it's ever been, not even close. Purpose wax and wanes. I mean, I think for me, I'm a little bit different of a person. Um,
Hmm.
and I often, that's the one pillar I don't think I don't want to say I don't need, but I have a habit of like building my own purpose. Like I just have to attach purpose to things that I do in life, not
Hmm.
just at work. So like for me, even when I worked at a grocery store and I didn't feel like that was a purpose, I was like, wow, people are like buying this food and like feeding their family. Like I'll find my own reason that I feel that what I'm doing is important. So anyway, yeah, I think the day to day being the highest I've ever had it has been an eye opening experience of like, oh, this is it. This is why people actually stay in jobs. Okay,
Right.
maybe I get it.
Yeah. So it never stood out to you as a thing that you needed from a job. You never like consciously articulated, I want to enjoy most of the days. I don't want to dread it. I want to look forward to it.
Well, I think specifically to get more specific about retail, I think the way that I looked at it was I love this product. I've never worked at a company I don't like the product.
Mhm.
So I've looked at it like, oh my God, I have worn these jeans my whole life. And I love the merchandising and I love just the aesthetic. And it sounds like this is a great company. Let's go work here. And I didn't think about like, do I want to be cleaning up fitting rooms every day? Like, is that something like, do I want to be refolding the same table 800 times? And it might sound like I'm just describing like the bad parts, quote unquote, about retail, but there are people who genuinely love. My husband is one of them. He could fold clothes until his arms fall off, and that would spark joy for him.
Mhm.
Um, so it's like I never really thought about and did like a mental exercise of like, what is an actual just regular, degular Tuesday gonna look like? What
Mhm.
am I going to be doing? And will I like it? And I think that I can't even say that after my 6 month break and all of our conversations, that I even went into what I'm in now thinking that. I think I just happened into something and was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And now it's sort of like I'm reflexively looking back and thinking, like, oh, so this is what I should have been looking for the whole time.
Yeah. Can we make some parallels? So what is amazing about your day to day right now? And I know being conscious of, not wanting to disclose where you are.
I think for me, it's about liking the conversations I get to have with people who come into the store. Obviously, again, continuing the liking of product. But I think, I love my analogies to relationships and work. And I think a good job is built on the small moments, much like a good relationship. You can't start dating someone, have the most amazing first date you've ever had, then like, oh my god, you have the best wedding anyone's ever been to, and then fast forward 60 years and your partner passes while holding your hand and it's a beautiful moment. That's not a relationship. Those like these like weird highlights. It's
Mhm.
the boring stuff of like coming home and being like, how was your day today? And like showing you care. And it's like these tiny micro things that like add up to be you have a beautiful relationship. And I think work is exactly the same. Work
Mhm.
is not, oh my God, they onboarded me and my first day was fabulous. And then a year later, I got my review and they said, I'm amazing, flips hair. I got my standard 3.2% raise. Look at me go. It's in the small moments. It's in those everyday things. And that those get accumulated. And I think because they're accumulated and they're so small, it's hard for us to pin down what those moments even are, and then how do we foster those moments and make it so that they're possible.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's exactly where we should take the conversation. To kick us off, you said liking the conversations you're having with the people who come into stores.
Hmm.
Why is that possible here? Or was there a time in a different place where you didn't feel like you liked the conversations?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, I think, going back to like my coffee days, I think there were moments, especially when I worked for like an independent coffee house, where
Mhm.
like I also loved the conversation because I was in an independent house. I was a little bit more given a little bit more leeway in terms of like expectations, but also like payroll and things like that. So like I wasn't as rushed. Whereas like in the corporate version of that, it's like you're so busy. I can't even have good conversations other than here's your coffee. Now get the hell out of the way so I can give the next person their coffee because now you're in the like, okay, Bob, like I love that you had a great day yesterday at work, but get the hell out of here. I got other people behind you. Like so it was
Mhm.
like I couldn't even build those connections and those like have those human moments that I want to have. And I think, quite frankly, most people want to have
Mhm.
because I was in a rush. And then I think in other places, because we're so focused on selling, which is not human,
Yeah.
it's just not, someone walking in the door and being like, hi, jump scare. But
I'm awake.
that's not, if you didn't have your coffee, you did now. But like, that's not gonna build a human connection for either person. And I think this is maybe like a spin-off episode to this one, but I think as we like navigate every tech bro's obsession with AI, our growing loneliness crisis, creating a human workplace is like more and more important. And so I'm saying all of this to say that like right now I'm just allowed to be myself, and we allow customers to be themselves, and then we meet in the middle, and then the product comes up at some point, and then we go from there. But it's like built on something real. And I think that's the most important thing.
So it sounds like there is a synergy of pace. The cadence of service that you have right now suits you. You feel like there is alignment between the service that you're expected to give and the service that you're able to give with the amount of time you
Hmm.
have, which I just bring up because I think that's been such an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
Okay, how about product?
Yeah. I mean, I think to go to like clothing, even if in the places that I have like really loved the product, I don't want to like be like everything is payroll because it's not. But some of it was just like, oh, I really want to like sit and have a little moment with this client about this denim that we both love. But like, I got a lot of stuff to do.
Mhm.
And that's not time, actually. It sounds like it is, but it's actually just workload mismatching and overruling the customer. I think what I'm allowed now is that focus. No one is trying to tear me away with 72 non-critical tasks.
Makes sense. Okay, so I'd love to see if we can focus on what gets missed and what to do instead. Our approach is essentially improving engagement by making real change in the day to day based on that organization's purpose and values or employer value proposition. Done well and with discipline and consistently, it should inherently improve both the day to day experience, but then also the perception of the purpose. So,
Mhm.
ideally, both those pillars end up going up in a way that's relevant and authentic to that brand. This idea of fix what managers can't, I think it's a crucial idea because managers are so key to engagement, but they can't override bad systems.
Mhm.
So, if corporate leaders want managers to lead well, they have to take ownership of the structural barriers that are outside of a store manager's control.
Mhm.
The pillars that Cato focuses on are managers, operations, and then communications and information hubs. Starting with managers, the experience of the day to day of your employees are only as good as the leader on the floor.
Mhm.
I think corporate overestimates the power and influence of their corporate initiatives in terms of engagement
Mhm.
and underestimates the power of a good manager.
Yeah, for sure.
So, what can they do instead? I mean, aside from quite literally, I was thinking about this morning. You know that several $1 million that you're about to spend on a new app? Don't. What if you didn't? And what would become possible to you if you were to really empower or leverage store managers in the way that you could with that amount of money? So you tell me what's in your way. Is it access to coaching? Is it access to really good programs and leadership stuff, like an under development of what we'll call soft skills? What is it?
Oh, I think someone could write a whole book with that question. I, like most things, I have a story um,
Love it.
to illustrate my point. So when I was at Old Navy, obviously big store, my store was 17,000 square feet. You know, when you're the leader on duty, your job is to, and most retail managers will know exactly what this is. Your job is to figure eight around the store. Um, so, you know, through the
Yeah.
store over and over again for your segment. And I remember when I was promoting someone new, and they basically were telling me they didn't feel like the team was like loving when they were taking over the floor. They were like, "Oh, when I take over the floor, I just feel like everyone's kind of like gets in a bad mood. I don't know how to like fix it. Like, what are, because we have so many things to worry about. Are they getting credit cards? Are people in the right place?" And I gave this advice, and I've been thinking about this ever since I knew we were going to record this episode, because I was like, this is the answer in a story, which is I looked at him and I was like, your job, most importantly, your job when you run this floor is to make sure that everyone is having a good time.
Hmm.
If you treat that as your most important job, all the other pieces fall into place.
Mhm.
But also, and I don't think I thought about it in this big picture way at that moment when I said it, but like I did use the word engaged. I was like, everyone will be engaged because they're having a good time. So you can get what you need out of them in that moment. And so one of the things I told him was, if you're not sliding behind the cashiers every hour, especially when it's busy, like when it's the most busy, this is actually the most important thing to do. And again, super anecdotal, I would like slide behind them and I would find a way to like make a silly joke or say something stupid that would make them
Mhm.
laugh to break the monotony of like the ringing and the returns and the ringing and the returns. Because then if I do that consistently, then one, every time I come behind the cash wrap is not a, oh God, here he comes. Tell us that we're not asking enough people about credit cards. Like
Mhm.
they actually have no idea what I'm coming back there for. It, and most, I make sure most of the time it's good, or funny, or not even work related or important. And I think that that's really important to when you're running a floor. So never mind what a VP can do, but in a store, it's really important to like make sure your team feels a sense of levity so that they're not like bogged down in the details. And I joke all the time that I think my most important job as a store manager is to be the class clown,
Mhm.
and keep the mood light, because the thing is employees will actually like, and I guess some managers can say that like, oh, well, my employees goof off, so they're having a good time all the time. And I'm like, but they're not having a good time about work. They're having a good time because they hate you and now they're talking about you in a corner. That's that's their engagement and you need to make it about work. And so I think, to go back to your original question, it really is about those small moments. And I think I've said this a million times, what gets focused on is what gets fixed or what we work on. And I think we're not asking managers and then giving them the tools, to your point, education, training, like how to
Yeah.
coach, etc. Because I also think there's a way to coach like that's fun. Even when it's something that they're doing really wrong. I think there's a way to like add humor, because at the end of the day, I hate you for making this a clean podcast. At the end of the day, like it's a t-shirt. It's a t-shirt. Why are what even the idea that I'm going to go sit someone in the back and be like, we need to talk about how you are really terrible at folding t-shirts. Like the idea that we're making everything in retail so serious has
Mhm.
always been confounding to me. Cause then I leave my four walls and I'm like in the street and I'm like, wow, that was a really stressful day for this. Why? Um,
Yeah.
Not to get overly philosophical about it, but I think the day to day needs to be more fun. There needs to be more levity in order to do that, in order to keep people engaged through those mechanisms.
Mhm.
It needs to be something that we're talking about and focusing on. And I think what sort of VPs can do to kind of hit that theme is, if it's not payroll you're going to offer, I'm actually okay with that. Like if you're not going to give more time to retail managers, because it does take time to engage your team in a fun way. I think if they want to like, because again, retail loves to operationalize everything.
Yeah.
I think if a VP is listening to this, to be quite frank, they're not going to be like, oh my God, here's more time and let me take away all your tasks.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if I were to say one thing, and it is another task, quite frankly, but then we need to figure out a way to operationalize like checking in with employees in the day to day. And I think, one of the things that I don't think we do enough in retail, but I think would be really valuable is actually asking employees, maybe not daily, but maybe multiple times a week, not just once a week. How was today? Was it good? Did you have a good day?
Right.
And why or why not? Did we not have enough fun? Because I'll tell you right now, I've had teams, if I'm in not a great mood because I'm human and I don't bring the class clown behavior, I've had employees be like, well, today was kind of like weird because like, are you good? And that's like my moment to be like, ooh, I forget sometimes that I impact everyone else as the leader. So I think finding a way to build in those check-ins, and you need to build that into the day somehow. So either like if you can't give more labor, then move something else down the priority list in either the day-to-day or weekly tasks. And here's a great example. When we have employee engagement surveys, oftentimes corporate does find the resources to either give you more labor. That's some companies are like, okay, you've been given 15 minutes per an employee. Or I've had other places where like we've swiped half the normal shenanigans so that you can really make sure every employee does this. And I think, why can we not just do that more regularly so that I can make sure my team is engaged? And then we won't have to worry about the employee engagement survey because they're going to be like, oh my God, I talk to Matt all the time. We keep up to date. He knows I've had one bad day out of 30 days. Because I think if we're not checking in, if we're not, again, analogy, asking our partner, how was your day at work? And now 90 days later, your partner is like, I really want to quit my job. It sucks. And you don't know that as their spouse. That's because you weren't checking in. You weren't asking. You have no idea what's going on. And it's, again, the same thing at work. So when your employee is like, I I got another job. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
It's because we're not checking in. And the reason we're not checking in, just to get back again, because I'm like not answering your question because you've asked me a hard question. So I'm dancing around it. Um, but to get back to it is it needs to be built into those systems. So if you have and every company that ever I've ever worked for has one in terms of a like leader on duty like checklist, like check the fitting rooms and run breaks, make sure customers or whatever. Like where on there is engagement in some way? I think every company would need to do that a little bit differently depending on the company. It can't look the same. But I think ask yourself, why are the employees not on this list other than their breaks? And that's not engagement. That's a legal requirement that, quite frankly, a lot of companies wouldn't even give if they didn't have to. So
Mhm.
that's not employee engagement. But why is the customer and tasking on that list and requirement so much and the employee is nowhere to be found? I think that's the starting place. I'm not sure I have a concrete answer of what they need to give or do, but ask yourself, why is running the store, especially during like a peak Saturday, why does that have nothing to do with employees?
Yeah. That's perfect. And we won't have concrete answers, right? Like this, if anything, what we're going to land on is like, here's where to explore. Here's
Mm-hmm.
where you think you should look into. What I think is really interesting, what you just said about about having to check in with people. I find that the best people stay quiet and like, be kind with my phrasing of the best people, but like the people who are really dependable and high performing and independent and just smart and try hard, they tend to internalize when something isn't going right. They tend to think like, what can I do this? Like I'm not getting it fast enough. And so they won't reach out and ask for help typically. And they're usually the people that you want to stay because they're so great and reliable and you think quiet is content, but it's not.
Yeah, I think that's for sure true. And I think you really risk losing that person or disengaging them, or, I think both are equally as bad. I had an employee the other day tell me that, and this is just me, like being me, and this sounds like a weird, like brag, but like I just like people. I care about people. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that most of the time that makes me a decent leader. But I said something to an employee that to me was like an offhand remark. It wasn't like I wasn't being, I don't know, I didn't think it was like groundbreaking. And then like a week later, she was like, I want you to know that meant the world to me. And I was like, oh, what? Because she is the oldest of eight. She has seven siblings. And I noticed that every day when we close, she like does the trash. And she's also the only female employee I have, which is also important to know on my small team. And I literally was like, okay, so you're not the older sister here. You don't have to do that here. We're all adult men with you. Please do not default to being the trash taker outer and the one who's like cleaning up the back room just because you're like that's your mode. And then I moved on with my life. And then I took out the trash. And then I actually told one of my employees the next day, like, can you please take it out before she sneaks, before she gets to it and defaults to it. And then a week later, she's like, the fact that you even recognize that, like, that's what I was doing and like just were like, please stop. She's like, that
Mhm.
meant so much to me. And I think, I mean, I'll always say this, like, knowing your team is super important. And like, I couldn't have known that if I didn't know the context with which of who she is and like what she was doing. And I've had enough employees in my life and enough older sibling employees. Also, they're great. I'm stereotyped, but hire someone with a lot of siblings. So, but that comment made her feel like seen and understood and appreciated in a different way. And it's like, it wasn't even, what did that take? 15 seconds? And it's like, again, I do have the luxury right now of like time and not having a bunch of tasks. But even if I was at Old Navy with 60 employees, I found time to show and appreciate. But I think we really need to also, so I talked about how we need to build it on the checklist. We need to get VPs and people to really look at those lists and ask, where are the employees on this list? Why are they not here?
Yeah.
And I think the second thing is a better world that I even imagine is they don't have to be on that list. Managers would just do these things. But to get there, you would have that's the second tier of this program in my mind. And to get there, you'd need to be providing managers with a lot more training to be leaders, which we're not doing. We're promoting the highest performing ASM or whatever the role is. And then we're like, oh my God, you're amazing. And then people are getting in that role and they're like, okay, now that I'm not touching as much, and now that I'm like trying to lead through people, I have to figure out how to like motivate, engage, and keep people happy.
Mhm.
And they're not a t-shirt, so I don't know how to do that. So
Yeah.
like, now what? And then we're giving them, I find that once we put them in that role, then we're actually a lot of times too hard on that store manager. We're acting like they should have just known how to deal with people. And so then we're like, well, your team is disengaged and you're not getting credit cards and your store looks like shit. So you need to treat your team better. And what that pressure does is it sends people into survival mode. And when people are in survival mode, they do not perform their best and they see a fork in the road, whether it's there or not. The fork in the road appears like a mirage, and they see treat employees better and hopefully get results. But if I don't, I'm on the chopping block. But most people take that second fork and they go, I just need to get results because or I already feel like I'm on the chopping block. So now they're going to get it. And
Mhm.
then we end up in the place we are in retail right now, where we look around and we go, how did we get in this wasteland? And it's because we aren't teaching people to be leaders. We aren't. And I think it feels silly to a lot of people to talk about like soft skills and empathy and humanness as if it's a skill, but it is a skill. And it is a skill that can be grown. Anyone can have it because we're all people. Some people have it innately, and I think that's great, but we can't always find those people. Or those people, I've had leaders who outside of work, they tell me stories about their family or volunteering or whatever it is that shows that they have the capacity to really care. And then when they're in work, they think the most important thing is the KPIs. So they like turn that off. They're like, okay, well, shut that off. Hey, Roger, where's the cards? And we just need to teach that person that it's okay to like not turn that off. Actually, if you could just leave that on and heightened. And so I think operationalizing it by putting employees on our lists of what to do is like the band-aid to the real issue, which is how do we get leaders to know how to lead?
Yeah. Whew. Okay. So what I'm hearing, that's great. And if I can attempt to summarize, what I'm hearing in terms of what corporate could do to let store managers be the critical pillar that they are in promoting team engagement, right? And we're talking about removing or altering or changing the systems that are in place that are stopping that from happening right now. And what I'm hearing about is those systems are, for one, to go back to our last episode or two, make sure you're hiring people, store managers who like people.
Yeah.
Like, and that speaks to again this am I going to like the day to day? What will my day to day look like? Because making sure that they know that the day to day is going to be about connecting with people and
Mhm.
engaging people. So step one. And then really the other part of it is reassess which KPIs actually correlate with retention, morale, and long-term performance. Maybe include team engagement and turnover in your performance reviews.
Mhm.
And then consider manager enablement a core ongoing business investment, not a one-time initiative when they first get, like, it's not just onboarding. Continuing to ensure that new managers that get promoted or brought in from outside or through whatever changes still understand that engagement is a priority.
Mhm.
And again, that's just like to your point about operationalizing. Don't just say engagement is a priority. Tie it to your performance reviews, put it on your checklist, your training, make it part of what you talk about on a corporate level. Sound right?
Mhm.
Okay. Any final thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, I think if you're a corporate team member or on some sort of engagement team, just looking at your business, whether it be the operations, the manuals, the procedures, and just think, where are the employees in here? Where are they? Can I find them? Or are are we not focusing on them? Because that's where the crux of engagement is, and also where the day-to-day is.
Yeah. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
You're listening to Dear Corporate, Love Stores.